Welcome to the Monday Medicine Stone Dharma talk. Today I want to prepare a nice coffee for you. So let's talk a little bit my pilgrimage at the end of my monastic training. How come I had to sleep in a brothel and had some Yakuza friends and also friends from the Japanese Secret Service? Even at time I slept outside and the bugs and insects started to eat my leg. So in the monastery, especially for the novices, there were many rules, millions of rules. How to look, how to stand, how to breathe, how to sit, how you hold your body, how you hold your mind. 24/7, many rules. And finally, when you mastered all these rules, and I was able to look for a teacher, at the very end of this practice and study and learning, I was thrown back to the marketplace. So I decided to do a pilgrimage, and it was with traditional almsround. I traveled all of Japan, 3,000 miles, step by step. I started at the very north, and it's a lot of nature. So I was chanting the prayers, and when someone put something in my bowl, usually it's money or rice, but I had an old wooden board on my back, and it was written that I'm doing this pilgrimage. So people, some actually, they donated rice, but that's not very smart, because when you doing an alms round in the monastery, it's easy because you can bring back the rice. But when you're all by yourself, you have more trouble when you get raw rice, because you have to find a place to cook. So it was a nice intention, but actually making more troubles. But so usually they gave money. And when I got some money, I was buying food. And then when there was something left, I bought the ticket, the bus ticket or whatever, and just traveling southwards. So every day I didn't know where I will be. So first I always had to look for a place to sleep. And taking care of my hygiene. Japan is very humid. So when you live outside, you have to learn how to take care of the hygiene. It's not easy to take a shower. So sometimes in a train station, on the toilet, I could wash myself. So at the beginning, I was sleeping a lot in the nature. And when you sleep in nature, you have to be very, very careful, because nature will start to kill you instantly. So I was very kind of romantic, and because in Switzerland you can sleep some days outside, that's no problem. Not so many insects, but in Japan it's a lot of bugs and insects and poisonous ones. So after the first night outside, in the morning I realized that ants started to eat my leg. That's not a good thing. It's really not. So never sleep on the floor in nature. And you learn very, very quickly when you are hungry and when nature starts to kill you. So the next night I had to look for a place somewhere up in the tree, just not on the floor. And when you've been many years to the monastery, you know how to sleep in a sitting posture. So it was very good to sleep on the trees. And so I traveled every day. Sometimes I had no money, no food. And when you have no food, after 2.5 days, you look at your fellow humans a little bit differently. Even 10 cents or whatever they could spare, but you're just standing there and chanting the prayers, and everyone who walks by, you just want to jump on his throat for this 10 cents. So you really learn what's going on inside you and how difficult it becomes when you have to control yourself on an existential level. And sometimes I got more, so I could buy a nice rice bowl or whatever. And so I was traveling day by day, night by night, step by step. So before the monasteries, with all these rules, and suddenly there was no rule. I thought I was my own master. I could do whatever I wanted. But when you re-examine closely, you never can do what you want. So days and months went by. Haven't spoken for weeks. Just walking, looking for food, looking for a place to sleep, chanting hours, endless hours. And on the countryside or in the city, every day was new and every day was the same. Many, many endless moments. Hungry, being full, chanting, walking, taking the bus, from city to village, to nature, to city. So when I took a train, I didn't know maybe it was to the next city. In the evening, I arrived at the city. And usually there's a north and a south exit at the train station. So I just took a north exit. And I didn't know the city at all. And the north exit was kind of the red light district. So I had my robes and my sign, and suddenly I was in the middle, in the evening, in the middle of the red light district. And in Japan, they're kind of funny. So at the beginning of the street, there are all the expensive brothels. And the further you proceed, the cheaper they get. So I was looking for a place to sleep, and usually the men, they stand outside the brothel and for the customers to get the customers. But nobody wanted me as a customer because they were very surprised to see a monk. And so I proceeded the street, and at the very end, there were some old Chinese grandmother prostitutes, and they had a lot of fun because seeing me. So they offered me a cigarette and a drink, and of course I accepted. And they said, "Oh, young monk, what are you looking for?" And I said, "Oh, I'm looking for a place to sleep." They said, "Oh, you're right. We have a place to sleep." And I say, no, really, just a place to sleep. And I sat down and we had a chat. It was a lot of fun. And so the big boss came and he said, "Oh, you're welcome. Please, you can sleep in the room." So I said, "But I don't want to make troubles for." He said, no, but maybe tomorrow a friend will pick you up. He needs a monk for a funeral ceremony. Can you do that? I said, "Of course. I gladly do it." So I slept at that place, and in the morning, a big limousine arrived. And I was surprised. So the driver asked me, "Are you a real monk?" Then I said, "Only a real gangster knows a real monk." So he nodded and took me to a very big house. Of course, in this big house, there was the big boss, the gangster boss. And he needed a memorial ceremony for his grandparents. So I conducted this memorial ceremony. And he thanked me a lot and gave me a little card with a number and his name. And he said, So whenever there's trouble, don't hesitate to call. And it was very interesting. So then I took this card and went by foot again, just southwards. That was very, I can't remember, at the beginning, yes. And after some weeks, I was near my home temple in Osaka. And Osaka has many hot springs. Because I have a tattoo, in Japan, you're not allowed to enter a hot spring when you have a tattoo, even nowadays. So I only could go to the sento, the public bath, where they kind of belong to the Yakuza. And when I was near my home temple, I knew a very nice public bath. So I went there. And usually when you enter, you have to pay for the entrance. And I wanted to pay, but the guy who was in charge of the tickets, he said, "Oh, no, you're very welcome. You can enter for free." And I said, "Oh, no, how come?" And then he said, "There's a name. There's a man from Tokyo. He is paying for your ticket." So suddenly I remembered this name. So it was this gangster boss from Tokyo. So he had some very connections to Osaka. So it was very, the rumor was already traveling with me together to Osaka. So I had now someone watching me and protecting me. So I went southwards every day. And one afternoon, it was a very hot afternoon, I was taking a rest in a nearby shrine. And someone was chanting the Heart Sutra. And I joined him. And he was very surprised that a foreign monk suddenly appears next to him and chanting together. So he could speak a little bit of English. And he was crying. And he asked me some questions, what I'm doing, and so on and so on. And I told him my story. And I asked him if he's in need of something because he's crying. So he told me that his wife recently got cancer and soon will be dying. So we chanted a prayer for the wife. And when we finished, he gave me his card. There was a name on it and a telephone number and his profession. So he was a agent from a Japanese, I don't know, security agency. And he said, whenever you have trouble, don't hesitate to call me. Oh, that's what, I'm very lucky. So now I'm protected by some gangsters and protected by some, yes, I have FBI agent, I don't know. So I traveled southwards and I was near my home monastery where I trained for many years. So of course I went to the monastery and say hello. And the abbot of the monastery was very pleased to see me. And I had tea, drinking tea with him. And suddenly he said, well, you have very strange friends. I said, how come? He said, you have a big mafia boss as a friend. You have to be careful. And also a special agent friend. And I was very surprised. How the hell did he know? And because the driver of the Yakuza boss, he was actually from a village near the monastery. And when he was checking me out, he was asking exactly from which monastery. And so the driver's family was supporting the monastery since many, many generations. And the driver called his family to donate to the monastery because there's a very interesting monk. And the family from the agent was from another village near the monastery. So my abbot from the monastery was smiling and said, well, it seems you're pretty good protected, but pay attention to every step, pay attention to every action. And so I went along southwards. Every day I didn't know where I will arrive. Every day looking for food. Every day looking for a place to sleep. So on this pilgrimage, it was endless moments. And very interesting things happened. And I never knew what will happen next time. Also, very, very boring. Every day the same. Looking for food, looking for a place to sleep. Chanting the prayers and waiting. Meditating 24/7. It was a good reexamination. So for weeks was just nothing. And suddenly, very interesting encounters. So even in a very random place, one word one tiny action can change a whole life. So we all have our pilgrimage. Every day the same. And still, every day is different. Let's re-examine this a little bit together. So, this throwing back into the marketplace is very important, because all the skills and discipline, whatever you have learned, it has to manifest in reality. Sometimes I was like a god. I didn't need to work. I was able to enjoy in all the pleasures found on earth. But also the lack of spiritual pursuits, and therefore no re-examination. Sometimes I was like a demigod, a half-god, filled with jealousy and anger, and always fighting to become a god. Sometimes I was like an animal, just driven by impulse and instinct. Sometimes I was like a hungry ghost, extremely thirsty and hungry. And sometimes I was like in hell, extremely hot, extremely cold, eaten alive. So that's why the re-examination is very, very important. Only as humans we're exactly crystal clear in the middle. Everything is coming and going. So as humans, we can really re-examine this. When you're like a god or a demigod or an animal or a hungry ghost or in hell, you are living in the moment. So you have to be very careful when you want to live in the moment. But as humans, we can act in the moment. Because when you act in the moment, you manifest enlightenment. Otherwise, you always right. Like the gods, they always get what they want. So to re-examine is really everything coming and going. And from where exactly do I see all this coming and going? Is a life and death thing. That's why a dialogue is so important and very difficult and very painful. Otherwise, you always believe whatever you think. So this pilgrimage was a good thing to deep down clean up all the ideas, to go back to the very, very root, to the very center. But that's no easy task. And it's painful because you're forced to see the things you don't want to see. You feel the things you don't want to feel. You encounter dark side you don't want to encounter. But you do it voluntarily, by your own accord, step by step. You accept the suffering. Otherwise, you just see what you want to see. And you become weaker and weaker. So every pilgrimage, of course, is an insight journey. That trains your skill. Also for the unseen. That's why it's so important to have friends and family, teacher and students, to help us to see the things we don't want to see. Otherwise, we're just counting the breath like a dead corpse. And like every pilgrimage, we have to leave home. Because every day is different. But every day is the same. So is it new or is it old? Thank you very much.